Really matters.
Hello, everyone. My name is Samantha Sosnik, and I am the host of Putting the Brakes on Bullying. And today with me, I have my co-host, Bernie Furshpan, and we are going to be discussing a very important topic called narcissism and narcissist people. And the reason why we're going to be discussing this is my podcast, Putting the Brakes on Bullying, definitely entails the narcissistic behavior. And I've always said that the bully is not always a narcissist, but a narcissist is always a bully. So I thought it was important to bring that into and incorporate that into my podcast because it's a very important topic, and it's very important for people to be aware of that as well. So how are you, Bernie?
I am good. This is a great topic because I think all of us have come across a narcissist in our lives. And it's something to discuss and to reveal, right? By lifting the hood to see what's the mechanics behind it.
Yes. I feel like, unfortunately, a lot of people that encounter narcissists are kind of blindsided. I think that when you meet a narcissist, whether it be in the beginning of your life or in the later part of your life, I feel like it's such an insidious personality disorder that they are easily snowed and easily engulfed in this chaos, which it is chaos. I wanted to read a definition because when you look up narcissism, or you Google narcissism, I was going to say a dictionary, but no one uses that anymore. Narcissism is a personality style characterized by an excessive preoccupation with oneself. It's extreme self-centeredness, a craving for admiration, and a lack of empathy for others. It ranges from normal self-confidence to a severe diagnosable mental health condition known as narcissistic personality disorder, which involves a grandiose sense of superiority and entitlement. So when you read this definition, that's great, but it's not something that you really, the layers of a narcissist and the true being of a narcissist run so much more deep than this definition.
I get the impression by this definition that they're basically defining it from the outside. This is what it appears to look like. You know, somebody who has a grandiose, but really on the inside, the internal workings, this person is very insecure. And they will grab at anything. They will grab at straws to make themselves feel valuable or validated by other people. And they generally look for people who are very generous and kind because they know they'll get it from them.
Correct.
They'll usually get compliments and generosity from them. And once they're trapped, right, they're held hostage to some degree. And that experience can be horrific for the victim.
Yes, it's very difficult to get away from a narcissist. And we've spoken before, and I've explained to you that I'm very familiar with narcissists, and that is because I was brought up by two narcissists. I wasn't lucky enough to just have one. I had two. Both my parents were very mentally ill people. And I always say when you're an older person and you've already created a foundation for yourself and you have tools to deal with all sorts of different people, I believe it makes it easier to meet someone, whether you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or even a husband or wife that you notice these traits in. I feel like it's easier to remove yourself eventually from that situation. I feel it's so sad and so debilitating when you are brought into this world, into that environment. And when I was, born to these two people, that's all that I knew. And all I knew was chaos. My home was filled with chaos and rage and intimidation and manipulation and gaslighting. And it was endless, the abuse that went on in my home. And it made for a very difficult transition into adolescence and adulthood and having children of my own. And I shared with you, I have a brother that's 4 years older. And unfortunately, we both suffered from many different problems. And unfortunately, my brother did not want to seek help, and he did not want to do the right thing by himself. And now he's living on the streets, homeless, and a druggie and
It can destroy
alcoholic.
lives.
It destroyed both of our lives for a very long period of time. My brother is still in that destruction period, which I don't see getting any better.
So there you have it.
Yeah.
You made some changes and choices that were beneficial. Your brother, for some reason, didn't make those choices.
Yeah.
However, you have a conscience and you have an intelligence to make these decisions. And I think most people are able to escape with help. I'd like to eventually in this podcast talk about some of the things that people can do
Yes.
to get out of this
Right.
kind of a relationship. It's not always just another person. It could be an organization that you're involved with that's kind of narcissistic, right?
Yes.
Many times I'm charmed by salespeople to get into a membership or a club. I remember I was involved with this club, and I'm not going to mention the name, but it was a club for renovation and appliances and things like that that you can get real cheap once you become a member. And I think it's a monthly or annual dues, and you're charmed to death. But once you're in, they don't care about you. They don't respond to emails. You're in, you sign a contract, you can't get out. And that to me is narcissistic as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's that whole premise of they'll charm you to death, and once you're in, it's hard to get out.
It is. It's very unfortunate. You come. We've also spoken about this. Fortunately and unfortunately, but I can now spot a narcissist from a million miles away.
Mm-hmm.
I can see
And
the
so
tendencies.
let's talk about some of those signs.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, when I'm not the type of individual that jumps into a relationship very quickly, and part of that is because I developed these defense mechanisms of not trusting, taking my time, because it's very easy to get love bombed by somebody, and that's one of the traits that that narcissists have. And they make you feel special in the beginning. And then once they have you, they become very abusive. My parents were very outwardly, especially my dad, very charming to people. And people, as I got older, like, whoa, what are you talking about? And that's not really him. But there were people that knew his real being, and my mother's as well. But it's very difficult to be out in the real world because that's all you're used to. So the love, getting back to that, the love bombing is very deceitful. And it's not really, the person doesn't really care.
It's a lure. It's a sugar-coated lure. But once you cross a certain finish line, they know they got you inside. You're in the trap.
Yes.
And so that's when they start abusing because they feel secure that you're not going to go anywhere.
Right.
Or at least they take that for granted.
And that you don't have anybody else.
Right. So but they set it up so that you don't have anybody else. They'll cut you off from other people, right? Mm-hmm. They'll take control of your bank account or whatever it is. And this way they have complete control. So they know that you cannot escape. And so it makes it very difficult. And sometimes when they blow up or they're out of control, then they apologize to sweet talk you back into that trap.
They definitely, some of them definitely do that. I never experienced that with my parents. There was never an apology or I did something wrong.
I think they assume that you're not going to go anywhere because you're their kid, right?
Exactly, and I wasn't. And, both of us were, you're very dependent on your parents. Your parents are supposed to be your safe spot. They're supposed to be, your home is where you go to get away from the outside world, not walk into the lion's den, And it was tragic because, getting into adulthood and going into the real world, I didn't understand, reality from fantasy. Everything to me was, even if something was, butterflies and flowers, it was like, well, what's wrong with that? That can't be true, and that can't be real, and that person's not really genuine. But there are good people out there, and there are people that, when I was struggling with certain things, I did have a lot of people that were my sounding board and I could trust. It took me a while, but I was able to put that guard down a little bit, enough to let that in. But, it's given me a lot more tools than I thought I would develop. And I do feel very confident in myself that I don't need to be surrounded just to have friends and just to have people around me. I don't need to ingratiate dishonest and not genuine people. I have like zero patience for that. Some people are very okay, much more okay with that. I'm just not that way. I'd rather have less than more.
Well, you learned a lot from your experiences, and you turned your life around. You made a big difference. And I find that narcissists, well, first of all, your definition was also a psychiatric definition. So people need to understand that it's a psychiatric condition. It's an extreme lack of confidence where people literally are always panicking. They have this level, narcissist always has this level of anxiety that they're going to get rejected. And so they can't take any criticism because inside they know they got a problem. Inside they don't feel secure. Inside they know that they may not be likable. So they don't want to hear any criticism because it just confirms the reason why they're not likable or that they should feel insecure. But it is a medical diagnosis. It's some kind of a neurosis, or, severe lack of confidence where they need people to latch onto to make them feel like they're validated in this world. So to some degree, it is a medical condition and they do need medication. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And once they have you in the trap, it's hard to get out. And the level of abuse, I think they kind of go into a state of unconsciousness in some of their behavior.
Right. What are you saying, when they're in a rage?
When they're in a rage, for sure.
Yeah.
That they go into this unconscious rage. And then when they wake up out of it, when they feel a sense of insecurity because you are no longer interested in that person, they will panic and beg for you to come back or to be part of whatever system that they've developed for you. And it doesn't always work for everybody, right? It doesn't always work. So, and that could be friendships, it could be all kinds of relationships, it could be an organization luring you in, but there's a lot of charm involved. So one of the signs that I find with narcissists is that they're extremely charming and they're very fast moving.
Right.
They invite you right away to their yacht, to their home, right? To their parties. They want you in there as soon as possible. And that's a sign. And people are so excited. Oh my God, I can't believe it. I'm going to be an actress. This director invited me to his house or to the party.
Well, they're also very, I'm speaking from the experience of my home where both my parents, well, it's funny because there was two types of narcissism that I came across. Mm-hmm. One is the grandiose narcissist, and the other is a covert narcissist. So it's interesting because my dad was the grandiose one and my mother was more of the covert one. Very different types, but the end result was just as damaging.
Let's talk about those two. That's interesting.
So the grandiose is where, they're entitled, they're arrogant, they're charming, they're very vain. That was my dad thought he was the best looking in the room. Right. He thought everybody wanted him. He was just, he was with money and with this. Meanwhile, he was a...
And if you reject him, it's like, how dare you? Yeah, Do you know who I am? I love that line. Do you know who I am?
Exactly. That's exactly how he behaved. And he had a temper that would take the paint off the walls in here. That's how terrifying he was. And that was the environment. And my mother was more of the covert, where she was pretended she was the victim, but she was doing all of this. She was more behind the scenes of the abuse as well.
Right.
And
Very
she
manipulative.
had the most effect on me in certain respects as I went on to have children, because when I had my first daughter, before she was diagnosed with her syndrome, I had a terrible time making that connection because I didn't have that connection with my mother. So it was a whole slew of issues, but it was very opened my eyes to the changes I needed to make if I was going to make, when they say the buck stops here and we're going to change the trajectory of my life. And I was very hell-bent on making a difference and having my children have a much different experience. And that didn't sit well with them. When I started to get better, things got worse. It was not appreciated that I was making a better life for myself, which is just off the charts bizarre to have. Even with my special needs daughter, I want her to reach her capacity, and with Tatum, I want her to reach beyond her capacity, and I want them to be more successful for me and than me, and do whatever they can do to better their lives. Like I enjoyed that. You know, you want your children to do better than you. So, you know, and my brother didn't want that. He wanted help, you know. We used to be in touch here and there years ago, but he just wanted financial help. And even though I did it a few times, it wasn't the right thing to do. And when I stopped doing that, it became useless and it became more of an animal, you know. So, you know, you have to take a step back and put your priorities in place. And I realized that I wasn't going to be of any help to him. I was only enabling the situation, and I didn't want to put my family through that. It became very toxic.
You've been traumatized. Have you passed on any of the trauma? I
don't think so. I think that I spent a lot of time in therapy. I knew it was something that I needed to talk about, because in my house you don't talk about anything.
So you did something.
Oh yeah, no, I was.
You were under therapy. Okay, that's
yes,
great.
And
and you found it helpful.
I found it very helpful.
Very good.
Very helpful, and you know, I just knew my goal was to not be like them.
So let me ask you.
And I had to separate from them. 13 years ago, I had to tell them we're done.
What if you didn't have therapy? Let's say there wasn't any therapy available. How do you think you'd be today?
I don't know.
Just curious, right?
Yeah, I don't know. You know, I don't know about that.
Well, you made a decision to fix the problem.
Yeah.
So you went to a therapist.
Yeah.
But you would have found another way to solve the problem.
I would hope so.
I would think so.
I would hope so.
I would think that you'd find another way to resolve it internally. Because
or maybe somebody else had come across, you know, me too, or that happened to me as well. That's always
you
very helpful.
You would have found a way, because you're a problem solver.
Thank you.
So you would have figured it out.
Thank you.
I'm just thinking.
Might have taken a lot longer though.
Well, okay, but you would have figured it out,
Right.
right? So because trauma is trauma, and it stays with you.
Yeah, no, it does. And there's I definitely recognize, you know, I always make a joke, I'm exceptionally self-aware. Sometimes it's kind of annoying because I'm really in tune with myself, and I try to, you know, be good to myself. I try to make sure that I put the bat down, because, you know, like I said earlier, when you are born into a family like that, what tools and what experiences do you have to say, okay, this is not right. Like, this is not okay. If I met somebody now, I'm like, you know, I'm not dealing with you, because I already know where this is going to go. But now, you know, as a child, like I said, you're reliant on, this is all I knew. This is all my brother knew, you know, and we didn't, there was no family around. None of our family was living close. So we were very insulated, and it was almost intolerable. It was intolerable, but it was like, you know, you kind of get used to it. You just kind of survive. We were in survival mode, and we were very close growing up. I guess we were subconsciously each other's, you know, support. And he was a very good brother. And, but, you know, we got to an age, you know, it's only so much you can do and bring it back into my life. I wasn't willing to do that, you know. So
we have a few minutes left.
Yes.
Let's talk about what people can do if they're in that kind of a relationship, and what people can do if they see themselves going into a relationship like that, and how do you put the brakes on it?
Well, you should always, hopefully people have friends, good friends that they can speak to, because sometimes friends are better than family.
Right.
I don't have.
And we have to listen to friends, because most people don't listen to friends.
Yes, and you have to listen to your friends. You feel secure and confident in your relationship with a good friend. I have one friend of mine I could speak to about anything, and sometimes you need to go to that person, talk to, and they say to you. I remember feeling people were like, "Oh, that's not okay," or "You can do that," and you're allowed to step back, and you're allowed to live your life.
Sure.
You're allowed to have your own life. Just because your parents give birth to you doesn't mean that you owe them, you know. So I think it's very important to have outsiders to speak to. Either, you know, hopefully if someone can be involved with a therapist, or they can seek out a friendship that, you know, they trust, and they can speak to them about that. There are groups to go to. And, you know, it's hard to say what to do, because you have to get to a certain point where then you can, you know, defend yourself against the bully, because that's what they do to get their way, is they bully you into thinking you owe them this, I owe them that. And it's not, that's not what it is. Relationship is not, it is fear.
They use fear.
Total
That's
fear.
how they control you, through fear. So what you're saying is, I think what I'm getting from what you're saying is, first of all, you got to be a little bit more courageous.
Yes.
You have to step up the courage and be a little bit brave because it's your life.
Yes.
If you're not going to fight for it, nobody else will.
Exactly. No one else will.
Now, if somebody sees some of these red flags, let's talk about some of the red flags before entering a relationship, whether it's with a company, whether it's with a lover, with a friend, whatever it is. These are some of the red flags that I've seen, some of the red flags that you've seen. First of all, I've seen somebody who's narcissistic, and I kind of got that almost immediately, is that they're very excited about me. They think I'm the best thing that ever happened. I mean, immediately a little bit overdone, over the top.
Yeah, like fake, it's fake.
And then I'm thinking, you don't even know me.
Exactly.
What are you saying? You don't even know who I am. How do you know I'm that great? Or whatever it is that you're saying. And that's a red flag to me. And then they move very quickly and they invite me to a whole lot of things and they buy me things. So this is like a red flag. It's too sugar-coated, too fast. And you got to put the brakes on and say, whoa, slow down. And you got to let them know. I find that I have to let them know that I'm keeping them at an arm's distance length.
And you can do that in a very
that I'm not reacting,
indiscreet way.
Very indiscreet way.
Yeah.
Not reacting right away, not being so excited about what they're saying. Being a little bit more stoic and not reacting to the way they want me to react, which is great. Wow, yes, let's do it. Right? Not to be overly excited about it.
And the good thing is also when you're coming across a stranger like that, at least when you go home and shut your door at night, you're not living with that person. You know, that's a very difficult, I know people that have been in relationships that are, to go home and live like that is just what a waste of time.
Right, but it starts off so beautiful and then it switches literally overnight. Once they feel that they got you in the trap, they feel secure enough to misbehave.
Yeah. I found interesting when I needed to put a stop with the relationship with my parents, I was, the phone calls and the voicemails and the, lawsuits for no reason. And once I just simply opened my mouth and basically, made it not a big deal and didn't care what came out of my mouth and what I said, it's so interesting how the narcissist, who is a bully, they kind of like
they
a deck of cards, they shrivel up.
They do totally show because internally they deflate.
Correct.
Because internally they feel small.
Yes.
And they felt big when you were around, and now they feel small. It's like they have no control over you.
They don't know what to do.
But they have no control over you.
Yes.
Right. So, any other red flags before we sign off?
I would say that's probably a good red flag. I'm trying to think because mine was a little bit. I don't really.
Well, you were born into this family, so that's different.
It's a little bit
different. But I'm
different.
sure you've come across a few narcissists.
100%.
So how do you know that they are?
I just see their personality. I just see that they're not they're gaslight. I've had conversations with friends that are no longer friends of mine that you can tell when they're talking about something, they completely don't take any accountability for anything. I feel like that's a very narcissistic trait. Like you don't have empathy for anybody else telling you that you are upset or that you did something. They know they did something. They don't want to take accountability for it because they're completely insecure. They don't know how to say I'm sorry because it's going to take away the mask, the cover up of who they are. It doesn't mean that it's going to go past the conversation, but they fear that other people are going to know they're not really who they say they are. So that's another thing. You can tell the way someone speaks. If someone says something to me, and I'm not perfect by any means, but if someone says to me, "Oh, this upset me," even if I feel that maybe I didn't mean it, I'm going to say I'm sorry because I want someone to know what they said was meaningful. What they said is important. If you can't take accountability, you are very, very self-absorbed. You're not thinking about somebody else's pain once they close the doors or how it affected them. Just like I've said, if you just smile at someone during the day, you don't know how that could have helped somebody. It could have, or you said, like I remember Tatum one time, she was young, she walked up to somebody and said to them she loved their shoes. I was like, that was so nice of you to say that to them. She goes, well, they had nice shoes. And the person might have said, that was such a nice compliment that I appreciated this young little girl saying. But as far as knowing it, it's an innate talent now that I can see things, through people. And, I'm not willing to, sacrifice myself for that kind of nonsense, and I think it's very important for people to have empathy, and narcissists lack a ton of empathy.
Wonderful. This was a great conversation.
Thank you, Bernie.
You know what's crazy about this life in this world is that, sometimes we need to protect ourselves against viruses, the very small, and sometimes we need to protect ourselves against the very large, like hurricanes and tornadoes. But the biggest concern that we have, the most money that we invest in, is protecting ourselves from other people.
Yeah, in the interpersonal relationships can be
from
very
passwords
dangerous.
to PIN numbers to locks and it just goes on. In insurance, right? Sometimes we have to protect ourselves against other people with insurance.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to get sued. So, people take advantage of this to some degree, but when it gets to an extreme level like this with narcissism, it's abusive and nobody deserves it.
No.
And
you should run for the hills. When you asked me before,
right.
You have to run for the hills.
Anybody who's listening and watching this, I hope this had a positive influence on you and given you some good tips. And I'm sure you've heard them before, but it's always nice to hear it again.
Thank you. I appreciate your input. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this episode of Putting the Brakes on Bullying. I am your host, Samantha Sosnik, along with Bernie Furshpan. And as always, please do something nice for somebody today. You might have brightened up their day. And I appreciate you listening. Thank you.